Hello and welcome to Shit. Hello and welcome to another amazing episode of Creative Appetite. Today I'm joined by my good friend Thomas. He is the owner and curator of Thomas Surfboards, which is a well-known surf brand not only through Australia but throughout the world. And I've been waiting a long time to get him on the podcast, and I'm super excited to have him on. Thank you for coming on, Thomas.
No worries, man. Thanks for having us.
Like I said, it's been a long time coming. Wanted to get you on earlier, but I didn't have a studio, and I was like mucking around, and then I had a home studio, and it was a bit of a nightmare. But I feel like it's better to, it's like a fine whiskey, just let it let it marinate before it happens. So I guess we can start right at the beginning. That's how most of these things generally go. When did you start shaping? Like, were you surfing before you started shaping?
Yeah, I guess I started surfing properly, I think around 12, 13. And then probably a couple of years after that, just started shaping as a hobby as a teenager. I think around 14, 15, I sort of got a hold of a blank and had a go at shaping the first board in Mum's garage. And then, just kind of slowly went on from that. It's just a hobby for a long time.
I find it such a rewarding experience when you turn your hobby into like your full-time job. But I feel like there might be, I'm not at that stage yet. Like, I'm not making, obviously this isn't a full-time job, but from what I've heard from other people that have those, like they move it from a hobby to a full-time job, they're like, it's really, really rewarding. And then you start having like business pressure come on top of that. And it's like, and that's not the fun part. They're like, and then it kind of starts to turn into something else.
Yeah, it eventually turns back into a job, I guess. It goes from, and it took a long time. It was a hobby. I don't think it became a full-time job till my late 20s. I'm not sure exactly when, like 27, 28, I think was when I finally quit the last part-time job and just made surfboards. Went to uni and did a bunch of other stuff in the meantime.
Oh, so while you had this full-time job, you were doing uni and stuff like that as well?
Yeah, so I did a social work degree and then I worked in that industry, worked in hospitality on and off, and then was building surfboards on the side, and then worked at a surfboard factory and then doing a few of my own boards on the side, went back to working in hospitality and doing a few of my own boards on the side until I just got too busy and kept trying to get out of shifts at the cafe I was working at. So then it ended up, just doing surfboards.
Come on, Thomas, mate. What are you doing here? You're like, oh. How was that jump, I guess, going from like a part-time job or like a full-time job, but then you're doing this part-time and then you're starting to gain momentum. You're like, was there ever like that doubt that if I leave this job and go full-time, there's that slight potential that people are going to just turn around and stop buying my boards?
Yeah, definitely. You kind of worry about it. You're like, fuck, am I going to be able to pay rent? Like, it's definitely something to consider for sure. And it's sort of like ripping off the Band-Aid, I guess, kind of thing. You're like, all right, well, hopefully this works.
It's like just diving in. You're like, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess I was pretty reluctant and took a long time to do it, probably because of that as well. You don't just rush into it. You're like, well, I've got to pay rent, I've got to eat. Yeah. So, you hang on to the part-time job as long as you can just for that safety net.
just like,
yeah.
They're like, let go, Jack. That moment. When, like, going back to just, as you stated, like when you started first shaping boards, what did that first board look like? I know a lot of shapers are always like, it was terrible. But did you miraculously just have this, like, you just shaped it, there was no chunks taken out of it? You're like, no,
the first one's pretty shit. I've still got it. I've got a bunch of the early ones. Some have sort of came back to me in time, but yeah, the first board's pretty rough.
Where does it sit? Is it at your house and you just look at it going?
No, it's in the glassing room. It's on the wall in the glassing room.
Is that it's like when you walk in the glassing room and all the boys doing their shaping, you're like, as a memorabilia, boys, don't do that.
Yeah.
All right? I don't know, whatever you do, just don't do that. Yeah, it's pretty daunting, I guess. But also rewarding, like looking back on those moments. Like when you have these boards and you're like, oh yeah. And do you have like a list of boards that you've kept along the way? So like maybe like it's like the first one real bad, but then you're like, 20 other boards later, you're like, oh, I'll keep this one.
Yeah, got a few from different moments. Like I think I got number 1 and number 4, and then skips ahead a bit, and then a few of the really, the first ones that sort of started to go really good. I've got a couple of those, either ones that I'd done for friends that made their way back, or a couple of my own boards that were like, hang on, this is actually a decent board. So,
did you ride the first board that you shaped?
Yeah.
How was that experience?
At the time, I think it was awesome. I loved it.
You were like, oh,
yeah,
kind of thing.
Yeah,
like,
stoked on, I made this, I'm riding it. But yeah, looking at it now, I don't even want to ride it because I kind of look at it and I'm like, no, it's not going to really go that good, but it's cool to just have it hanging on the wall.
Every time I speak to friends who, some friends that do just homemade shaping, I always think of that moment. I don't know if you've seen the film Surf's Up, where he shapes that board and he takes it out, and as soon as he jumps on it, snaps in half. That's always in the back of my mind when people tell me they've surfed their first board. I'm like, did it snap?
No, I mean, I was lucky. It's still in one piece. It didn't fall apart. I didn't glass the first one. I took it to a factory and got it glassed properly, so that probably helped. But some of the first ones that I glassed myself also weren't so crash hot glass jobs, so a couple of them fell apart.
Waterlogged.
Yeah, a couple didn't, but yeah.
So you mentioned that you did a couple other jobs. Are you originally from the sunny coast?
I moved to the sunny coast in grade 4, however old that is, like primary school.
So basically sunny coast.
Yeah.
I guess, really.
But yeah, I was born in Sydney and then lived in Western Queensland in Blackbutt for a few years, and then moved here when I was grade 4. I can't remember. Used to spend a bit of time on the Gold Coast. My uncle lived on the Gold Coast, and so I'd go there and he'd take me surfing or bodyboarding, and then as soon as we moved to Maroochydore, and I kind of just started surfing all the time then.
I remember I've been to Blackbutt once. I used to work for a stonemason company fitting kitchen bench tops, and we had to go through there to go to this other place way out in the sticks.
Yeah.
And as soon as we got there, this guy that I was working with at the time was like, mate, you got to go into this bakery and try this Hungry Jack's pie or something. I was like, what? And apparently it's a really famous bakery that people travel from all over to go to this place. I don't know if it was around when you were around.
I remember. I vaguely remember the bakery, but I don't remember anything about it.
It's such a small town, yet holds such a monumental thing that people will travel to. Even in Darwin, the Mindle Beach Market / Sunset, people will apparently fly from international just to come see this sunset because it's so amazing. I can confirm it is amazing, but I'm just it's just what really excites people and gets them going. So when you were, I guess, first starting out, was your parents did your dad or your mum get you into surfing kind of thing, showing you surf films, and was that the first bit of stoke for you?
Not really. I guess it was my uncle taking me to the beach whenever we'd see him, my mum's brother. That kind of got me into it first.
Yeah, and I always find as a you look back, you reflect on growing up. It's those moments that you always hold near and dear to your heart. I remember the first time I went to the beach and my mum's friend was taking me out surfing and stuff, and they're like I don't know what it is with parents, but when they take you out surfing, they overestimate your abilities. They're like, no, don't worry, this 6 foot swell is going to be fine, you'll be okay, and you get absolutely rinsed, and it's such a, but you never forget it. You always, And then I just wonder, if you have kids or anything, do you do the same thing? Is that
I try not to push him. I've got an 8-year-old or nearly 9-year-old son that's sort of getting into surfing a bit when he feels like it, but I don't know. I've seen a lot of parents push their kids into it too hard and too much, and the kids just don't like it. They get scared and then they don't want to go back. So it's just we go to the beach and take his board, and if he wants to use it, he can. If not, build a sandcastle.
Yeah.
Hang on the beach. I figure he's around surfing and surfboards enough that he definitely doesn't need it forced down his throat any more than it is just by circumstance. So definitely don't want to pressure him into it.
Be like one of those crazy surf mums down there.
Yeah,
come on, we're gonna get
seen enough of that. He's more keen on jiu-jitsu than surfing at the moment,
which is perfect because you got
it's right there.
There.
Yeah, and it's it's a cool thing for him to be into. So
I don't do it personally, but apparently it's a very it's a good discipline to learn for your confidence and as like a human building experience, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's great. Like I don't do it, but he's right into it, and a few of the boys that work here do it too, and everyone seems to love it. And it seems like there's a huge crossover sort of between jiu-jitsu and surfing too. A lot of people, great surfers, do jiu-jitsu, and jiu-jitsu guys surf on the side as well. So kind of goes hand in hand.
Yeah, I guess because I surf, but I would never say I'm a crazy professional. But you can see that with surfing, it takes so much discipline, and you got to show up every day, kind of thing, and really put in a lot of time and effort to get good at it. And it seems the same with people when I speak to them about jiu-jitsu. They're like, you can start, but you never, it's just like a never ending.
Yeah, you got to just consistently train and keep practicing and practicing and practicing to get good. And so I guess there's big similarity with surfing.
And do you still surf? Do you still go out and do heaps of surfing, considering that you now run a business that?
Yeah, try to. I mean, I got to work late this morning, so I went for a surf. It just depends. I'm a bit more selective now than I used to be, I guess. If the surf's shit, then there's work to do. I'll go to work. But if the surf's good, you always find time. So it's, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 times a week normally at least, but it varies.
Yeah, it's because it is interesting. I find, with someone, when people go into an industry that they love, they tend to, some people probably don't surf as much as what they do, or maybe not surfing in particular, but other industries, I guess. It's not that they lose the passion, but like I said before, it kind of becomes the business. So then they end up finding other hobbies that excite them.
Yeah.
So I think if you still do this, if you still surf / shape, I would say, in my opinion, you'd still be relevant within the industry on what certain, how to shape boards or new models and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think if I didn't still want to go surfing or didn't still surf, I think it'd be kind of weird that I was making surfboards still. And I've seen it a lot with guys that, my age, or they get a bit older and they're surfboard shapers or board builders, but they've stopped surfing. And it's like, well, what are you building surfboards for? It's a dusty, dirty job where you don't get paid very well. Go do something else. It's, it's a passion job or passion industry. And if you're not into surfing and surfboards, it's sort of, I don't know, I find it a bit hard to why you'd want to still be doing it if you weren't surfing.
So yeah, and you wonder if they become disgruntled about surfing.
Yeah, some of them do.
I have seen some interviews just online because I watch a lot of surfing stuff. And you can see it in the shape of the way they speak about it. You're like, oh, this person seems a little bit disgruntled about the new wave of the industry and how it all.
I mean, I guess with a lot of industries, but it's an ever evolving industry. It's always changing, but there's no point getting disgruntled about it. You're just stuck in your ways if that's the case. It's kind of what keeps it interesting and exciting is that there's no standard or set type of board or set way of doing something. It's always changing and evolving, and fads come and go, but it's what keeps it interesting because you're just doing the same thing day in, day out. It's going to get pretty boring.
Yeah, exactly. And it is. It's such an individual experience too. I guess for the surfer, you can enjoy it with your friends, but for the most part, you are on the board by yourself. Yeah, kind of thing. So whatever it is that you get out of it, it's
a selfish act. Yeah, for sure.
Just give me that wave. That's mine.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, but you going surfing, it doesn't benefit anyone or anything other than yourself. It's definitely a self-indulgent thing to do, but it's pretty fun too.
It is one of the funnest things. If anyone hasn't done it and they want to try it, definitely go out there and give it a go. That's what I found. What was I going to say? Oh, just touching on your board shapes and stuff. I've always been intrigued about longboards and their design because to me, there's one particular shape, I'm not sure what it's called, that you design, and it's really has right at the back at the tail, the body's really wide, but then the nose kind of pulls in a bit.
Yeah.
How does that work in terms of being on the wave? Is it wider at the tail because then it sits in the wave more so you can stand on the nose?
Yeah, and it's probably bit of a kind of trick of the eye a little bit. Like the nose is still wider. It's just, where the wide point is, it kind of makes it look like the tail's wider because there's all that curve down the back and the front's kind of straighter in the rail. But yeah, I mean, the wide tail and having the area in the tail just gives you stability for nose riding, makes nose riding easier. And the narrow nose, if the waves are pockety and hollow, like a Noosa kind of wave, you just don't need a wide nose to nose ride. It kind of gets in the way. A narrower nose will sort of sit and hold in the pocket nicer. So it kind of works for that kind of thing. So
yeah, I was like, I need to ask him this question because that was out of all the, because I don't actually plan anything. I don't do any research. I tend to find that it's a better experience for both parties if it's like more just natural because you just get to learn. But that was one specific thing that I was like, I must ask him about this because I love longboarding and I just love surfboards and like watch heaps of shaping stuff because I just find it so interesting. And I would have done it myself, but I lived out in the country and I mean, you're not going to shape any surfboards out in the country when you're growing up. But yeah, I just find surfboard design so intriguing, even like the fin shapes and stuff like that. So do you shape your own fins or?
Not anymore.
Give that one up. Let it be.
Too many boards, too many fins. But I used to, like, when I first started making surfboards full-time or part-time, that was sort of part of the board building process, was making the fin for the board as well. But, there's only so many hours in a day and I can't go making 35 fins a week and on top of shaping 35 boards and running a business as well. It's just not possible.
Yeah,
so now I get them made, but design them and kind of try out ideas and different designs of fins, and then all right, that works. Then I'll go and get them produced.
And do you, when you shape your boards and you have a new fin design, do you then go out and test them yourself to get a feel for the board on the wave and things like that?
Yeah, not all the boards. Like I don't ride a 510 thruster, so those kind of boards I rely on input from team riders and friends and stuff. But then a lot of the longboard models and longboard fins and mid lengths and stuff that I ride, then as well as getting input from team riders and stuff, it's also my own input as well.
Yeah, because I always just wonder, because you see in like interviews on like Mick Fanning, for example, with DH, and he's just talking about by the way, Mick Fanning seems to know, like he's very, like his brain must be super intricate because the way he describes even fins and things like that, he's very like just everything's like to the T, if that makes sense. I don't know if you've ever seen an interview with him.
Some surfers are a lot better than others. Like some, no matter how good a surfer they are, they're pretty useless at understanding board design and why certain boards work and what elements of a board are doing what and why they like one and not another. Whereas others like Mick and a couple of guys I work with really understand and are really good at translating that, which as a shaper, it's awesome to work with those kind of surfers because you can really get a lot out of their input. Whereas other surfers are just like, yeah, that one turns better than the other one, but they don't know why. They can't really translate the feel. They know how it goes and it's better or it's worse, but they don't understand why and they can't explain that to you. Whereas some surfers like Mick seem really good at it, and definitely as a shaper, it helps if you've got input from guys like that.
And we're back. No. Yeah, when you first started shaping, who was like, obviously I'm assuming, did you just all self-taught, like no teacher, or did you have like a bit of a mentor who kind of helped you out?
At the start, it was mostly self-taught. Brian Weir, who used to have a surf shop in Cotton Tree, Maroochydore, called Weir's Inside Edge, he kind of helped me out and got me my first blank and gave me a few basic pointers and told me what tools I needed and kind of showed me a few things. And then it was a lot of trial and error at home. And then years later, I got a job at a surfboard factory. And that's when I learned a lot more and I guess a lot quicker by getting taught by someone that built surfboards as a job. It was at the factory in Caloundra. So Paul Carson, he's retired now, but he ran that. So he helped me a lot in terms of tips with shaping, but also glassing, sanding, kind of the whole process of building boards. I've worked there fixing dings and sanding and polishing and stuff for him, as well as shaping my own board. So that's kind of, I guess, where I did my apprenticeship, I guess you could say, to an extent, was working there.
Yeah, it seems like such an unorthodox industry to get into in terms of like apprenticeships. Or maybe now I feel like it could be a bit different.
Yeah, it's a little bit different now, but it's still not a recognised trade. There's still no, you can't do an apprenticeship to be a surfboard shaper or a surfboard glasser or something. There's still not a recognised industry or something, trade certificate or anything for board building. The closest, I think, is something to do with boat building and working with composites like resins and fiberglass. But yeah, there's still no surfboard specific.
Yeah, okay.
Which is kind of crazy because it's such a big industry now.
I was about to say, like, it's massive. And I guess I had on, she's a tattoo artist, and she was talking about the kind of like the steps like going into that industry, because tattooing's kind of similar in terms of it's really hard to like get people to give you like an apprenticeship to go into a shop and things.
Yeah.
Is it the same with surfing? Like, do you have to like keep showing up every day kind of thing, hounding the person to, or is it, because I feel like, because like you stated before, and like I kind of know that it's like a passion thing. It's not a thing of like, hey, like me turning up to you going, hey mate, can I just like start shaping boards? Like you kind of want to know, like you can kind of see it.
I guess with young kids that show up, it's, they got to be keen and eager, and you got to do the shitty jobs first. I think, I started out fixing dings and sanding and polishing, and you do that for a long time, and the shaping thing is the hobby. That's the bit that everyone wants to do, but not everyone gets to as well. I think the amount of emails or Instagram messages and stuff I get, it's like, oh, do you have a job? I want to be a shaper. It's like, wrong question.
Yeah, you're already off on the wrong foot.
Yeah, that's not how it starts. I think, unfortunately, it's like doing an apprenticeship. You don't say, oh, I want to be a carpenter and I want to make really nice, beautiful homes. You don't do that straight away. You got to start at the bottom, and it's, I guess, no different to any other industry in that regard.
Yeah, I guess because you are like, I would, in my opinion, would say you're pretty prominent shaper within the industry, especially on the Sunshine Coast and within Australia. And yeah, just touching on that, like with people sending you Instagram messages like, hey man, can I just come in and start shaping? I feel like it would be better to come in person kind of thing. So if there is like a young kid listening right now and he was like, you know what, I'd really, really want to learn from Thomas, that would be your, like, you like come into the shop,
I think,
maybe show your face. And
we often get kids come in, they want to do like they do the work placement through high school and stuff like that. And you get kids that come in and they like walk up to you and introduce themselves and like, hey, I've got to do my school work placement for a week. I was wondering if I could come and do it with you. And I'm like, yeah, cool, But most of it's going to be cleaning, you're going to be sweeping, you're going to be emptying bins, you're going to be doing this, but you can hang out and watch me shape, and you can hang out and watch the boys glass and do that stuff as well. And then you get other kids that will come in with their mum or dad, and mum or dad come up and go, hey, my son needs to do it. I was like, nah, sorry. If he wants to do it, he should have asked me, not you. That's kind of, I guess, seem a bit harsh, but it's at the same time, it's like, well, if the kid wants to do it, they might be shy, but, it's an industry where we're all walking around the factory busy. We've got 100 things going on.
Yeah.
If they're not confident enough to walk up and say, hey, my name's Steve, I want to come and spend a week in the surfboard factory and see what you guys do. If they're not going to ask on their own, then maybe they should find somewhere else to do it.
You're not here, brother.
Yeah.
Because I remember like growing up, I'm not sure how old you are, but I'm 29. So like coming from the country town where I grew up, and my stepdad, much the same attitude as you. He was like, look, you got to work your ass off to get anywhere. Like no one is going to give you an opportunity without being confident and asking yourself. And it's like, he's like, it might not always work out. They might say no, but you're gonna learn something from it, even just showing confidence and going, hey, I'd like to do this. And he's like, and then when you do get it, he's like, you're not doing all the fun things. He's like, you're sweeping the floor, emptying the bins, like all that kind of stuff.
That's what I had to do.
But I think that I don't know in other industries, but in industries I've worked in, it's like you need to have those foundations before you can even get to doing the other things anyway.
Yeah.
Because if you don't learn the basics, you can't operate doing the like high end stuff where it actually requires focus and because like emptying bins and sweeping floors, it's mundane as like hell, but the focus you get from it because you're like, well, this is all I got to do, so I'll just focus on this and do this.
And it's part of the job. Like I got to sweep my shaping bay every day and empty the bin every day. It's like it's still part of the job too. Like it never goes away.
It's like you're not running around, all right, boys, going to my shaping bay and just... Yeah. You can't.
No, you get it 1 week a year when you get the work experience kid to clean your shaping bay, but the rest of the time you got to do it yourself.
So even just touching on shaping bays, so because obviously we're in a very... Like, to me, this is my favourite place on the Sunshine Coast, and I love it because it reminds me of when I was younger, going to, like, a specific store or something that you felt comfortable in and it had a real homey community vibe, and like everyone around here is like super happy and just it's like just a massive big compound of fun, really. Like it's a nice place to be.
Yeah, no, it's pretty, as far as surfboard factories go, I think we're pretty lucky that we got a pretty nice one, a nice space with other stuff going on as well. It's not just a dusty surfboard factory, so it's kind of cool having pro movement, jiu-jitsu, the barbers, co-working office space. Just kind of brings a better vibe, more of a interesting vibe to a place rather than just building surfboards.
Was that when, just touch, like, because we're talking about that, was that when you obviously were looking for a place when you were about to expand, was that kind of like your vision going into it when you were going through the steps of like becoming a shaper and you're like, all right, now this is starting to become feasible, I'm making money, I'm making this, that, and then you're like, well, now I'm kind of at the point where I can build my dream like kind of vibe, I guess, for lack of a better word. Was that something that you were looking at? Like,
yeah, I guess it wasn't sort of like a master plan, but we had, friends that wanted to do stuff as well. And like, oh, well, hang on, if we get a big enough space and you can come and do it with us and do it next door. So it was kind of more, I guess, a bit more, as wanky as it sounds, organic. It wasn't, planned, but it was like, well, we want to open a pro movement, do a training studio. Well, if we get a bigger shed, you can have part of the shed and do it with us. And
yeah, it's like
kind of just happened like that sort of thing. It wasn't like we sat down and went, all right, we're going to do this and then we're going to get these things. And yeah, it just sort of evolved, but in a good way.
Yeah, I definitely think that it has a very big sense of community vibe, which is something that I'm personally I'm trying to achieve that with the podcast, but as well as just in my own space of life. And it seems like, I think that's probably why I'm drawn to it so much, because it seems like you and everyone around here has created that. Like, you don't feel uncomfortable coming in here going, oh, there's a shaping bay going on, but oh yeah, there's a barber shop and there's this and there's like, it's just like a really nice space to be in.
Yeah.
Is that something maybe like you always kind of were trying to create as well, like just within your own life, like a community-based thing?
I think indirectly. It wasn't.
Yeah, I'm not saying like you're going,
yeah,
right.
it wasn't sort of planned, but it's like, well, if I'm going to go to work every day, I want it to be enjoyable and be nice, So it's just making it somewhere where I'd want to go, I guess. It's like, oh, that'd be cool if that was there, and it's just making it what you'd want, what I would want to see if I went somewhere or did something. It's like, yeah. It's
like there's so many personalities involved in this. Like, you got art all throughout here. There's like all these old surfboards and new surfboards, and then there's like more art out there, and like it's like everyone's just had their bit of personality like, brought into it.
It just makes it interesting. You collect stuff along the way, and it just makes for a nice environment. You're spending all day, every day here. You might as well
turn up and
enjoy being there. Be somewhere where you'd want to hang out,
which is so rare, to be honest. Like, there's so many spaces where like people work in and they just hate their life. Even if they have their own business, like a mechanic shop,
Yeah, it's not a pleasant environment.
Yeah, they're not going in there going, oh. So there is one mechanic shop in Budrum, just a sidetrack, that I went there and he seems like he really enjoys his space. He's got like graffiti all over the front of it. It looks like this. It's actually quite bizarre because it's the only mechanic shop I've ever been to where I'm like, this actually looks like a fun place to be.
There should be more because really, like at the end of the day, it doesn't take a whole lot of effort.
No,
and it's not something you should have to work overly hard to do. It's just, all right, well, there's a whole bunch of walls and an empty space. I'll just take a day and make it comfortable. Put shit on the walls that I want to look at.
Yeah.
It's not.
And I'm sure it didn't look like this when you first started. So when you first started, was it just like a garage or like a garden shed kind of situation?
Yeah, we had basically a garden shed and an old shipping container. And then we took over ran out of space and we got a little shed next door to that. And then we ran out of space and we got a little shed next door to that. And then ran out of space, so we got the shed next to that. And then that all became too small, and then this opportunity became available. So we moved down here 5 years ago.
So it's been a natural progression of just...
Yeah,
like
it's just sort of slowly grown in size as it's needed to. And we're like, all right, we're run out of room. What are we going to do now? And we were lucky at the last place we could slowly just kind of expanding and taking over the adjoining spaces. So like the neighbour was like, oh, I'm going to move out. It's like, sweet, I'll take your shed. And then the next neighbour was like, oh, I'm going to move out. It's like, cool, we'll take it. So kind of, we were lucky that kind of fell into place.
Slowly but surely.
Yeah,
taking over
it was good not having to move because it's a big exercise. When moving, it's easy just to grow into a space that's next door rather than having to pick up and relocate the whole thing. So that kind of worked in our favour. Yeah,
I could imagine trying to shift something of this size.
Yeah, I don't want to do that now.
It's like you just buy the next building and just keep buying. With so because I've found this so interesting for me personally, like watching people with such deep passion that they do it for so long. Like I find that my parents that in that generation, they stay married for 20 to 40 or 60 years, however long. They do their same job for like 20, 40, 60 years. Not saying that they all loved it, but they're seeing when someone is passionate like yourself, who's been doing this for quite a long time, and you could have easily just shifted and started something new. Have you ever had a moment where you just didn't, you were kind of like, oh, like you kind of have those self-doubts where you're like, maybe I'm not as passionate as I thought I was, or has it always just been like a true, like just a feeling that you could never describe to someone?
It comes and goes. I mean, some days you're definitely less motivated than others. I think doing anything for so long, sometimes, some days you're just like, fuck, I don't want to go to work. Some days it really just feels like a job, but then it's like, oh, hang on. Look where I'm going and what I'm doing. What else would I do as well? And then other times you just like, you wake up at 5 a.m, you've got an idea, or you just want to, get straight in and do it. So it varies, but yeah, definitely I can't think of something else I'd rather be doing for sure. It's, I make surfboards as a job. It's pretty good.
Like the best job in the world, really. You can't.
So yeah, I don't know what.
No, that explains it to me, because it's just, I just find it so like interesting. Like when someone is so passionate and they do it for so long, you're like, man, it's like a very admirable thing to see someone that is, if that makes sense. Like I get really excited by it, 'cause I'm like, man, that's someone's really just, they've like the mind hasn't shifted. Like they're just like gun ho. That they're so passionate about it. It's like it's very inspiring, I guess you could say. But you just mentioned then talking about like you might have an idea at 5 a.m. kind of thing. So for me, when I have like shit going on in my head all the time. There's 1,000 ideas going, and sometimes they come at the weirdest moments, like 3 a.m. in the morning or 5, and you're like, oh, I've got to write this down, and you're like, all right, and then you try to tell your friends and they're asleep, and you're like, oh, I better not bother them. In terms of like shaping and stuff, I feel like how many different shapes do you aim for? Do you do little short boards and long boards, or like do you more specifically try to change like intricate designs in your shapes?
It's a bit of everything. So you have, new ideas, or you're like kind of, I guess, like thinking of a new model or something, so to speak. So then, you will kind of, I guess, start fresh on a new design, and then other things that other boards, or it is just fine tuning. I wonder if that board would go better if I changed the rocker or change the bottom contour a little bit. And so it's a bit of both. Like it's from, kind of, not completely new. Everything's kind of sort of to some extent been done before, but, new ideas. I was like, I want to do a mid-length of this fin setup and, a diamond tail or, a swat, but then other things it is just, really just minute little changes on something that's already good, and you're like, I wonder if I can make it any better.
Yeah, with like surfboard design and shapes and things of that nature, I just find it so interesting, like to look back from where it started to where it is now, and how refined and like even just surfing, I think as a culture in general, how it's shifted and all the different subcultures, I guess it's kind of made within itself. But with your design specifically, what was the first one that you created that you sold, I guess, to your friends or whoever?
I guess, it was more the traditional heavier single fin longboards that kind of got me into shaping at that time. There was not really anyone around here, but, very few people making those types of boards. And that was kind of just through watching old videos and then riding old, like, mid-60s longboards was kind of the type of surfing I was getting into and being, getting stoked on or being inspired by. So that kind of made me want to shape to start with in a way, because that was the only way. I was like, I want to try this kind of board, but I didn't, as a 14, 15-year-old, didn't have the money to go buy one, or also didn't know where to go buy one because it wasn't something that was, being made at that time. So that kind of got me into shaping in a way. I was like, well, I want to try these types of boards, and making them was a cheap way of doing it.
Yeah, how much is a like, I don't know, how much is like a blank now compared to like a blank back then? Like, where would you even get a blank back then?
Same place you get them now from, like, I get all of mine from Burford's on the Gold Coast. They've been making blanks since the late 60s, early 70s. So yeah, still buy my blanks. People. Yeah, from them, as I bought my first blank, well, not directly through them, but like through Weir's Surf Shop in Cotton Tree, but they got the blank off Burford's for me. So it's like, still.
I see them everywhere, like the Burford boys, like with their logo.
Yeah.
And even like Mick Fanning, I remember I watched, like, because I have Stab as well, so I was asking you about it out there. Like, I was watching it. I was just watching it, like him in the electric surfboard test he did. But he was talking about, like, the stringer in the center of the board. He was looking at it. He was like, oh, that's not from, like, Australia. That's from another. I was like, what? Like, how can you tell the difference between the stringer and, like, the difference in countries? I was like, it was so mind-boggling to me. I was like, I'm assuming you could probably tell the difference.
Yeah, I guess you just know what, different timbers and even different foam from different companies looks different. You hold it in the light and you can kind of see how the light bounces off the foam. You can kind of say, oh, that's not a Burford's, that's a South Coast blank. They're a bit, shinier looking. You can kind of see the little differences, but yeah, I guess it just comes through trial and error, and I've been lucky with all the travelling to shape. I've used all different brands of blanks in France and in California and stuff, so you kind of get to know the different foam and different stringer timber from different places.
So I did see that you went to Hawaii recently, didn't you, to shape?
Hawaii? That was the last shaping trip I did pre-COVID. Went to Hawaii I did like a week shaping and then a week's holiday.
So what does that look like, I guess, in terms of as a shaper? So other shapers contact you and go, we would like you to come over, shape a couple of boards because we already have customers there kind of thing? Or is it just more of like a networking? Like, I don't really understand how it
Yeah,
works.
that was for a guy Carson over there that makes boards, but he also has a surf shop. And he was like, "Oh, I wanted some of Thomas boards for his shop, and then also for a couple of other shops, and then some custom orders." So they kind of take a bunch of orders and then invite you to come over, and so you just come over and shape them. And
That's wild. It's like you're like a musician or something. Like they're just flying you in, kind of thing.
yeah,
Like,
kind of, yeah, it's like that, or like FIFO working. You know, you fly to France and shape 80 boards in 2 weeks, and you shape for 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, and then you fly home again, and then a month later you go to Bali and do the same thing. And
how I guess how was like where was the first country someone invited you to go over, and how long ago was it?
good question. I think it might have been Bali, probably like 10, 12 years ago. I think was the first trip I did to shape somewhere. I think it was Bali at Deus.
And was that when someone's invited you over? Were you like, I've made it. It
was pretty cool. I was like, sick, I get to go to Bali and I'm going to get paid to do it. How good.
Yeah, it'd be I could only imagine like it'd be such a surreal feeling.
Yeah.
Like someone obviously is so stoked on your product. Stoked's probably not the surf word to be using in this podcast, but like they're so happy with your product, so that they want, like, they're flying you over specifically to shape boards.
Yeah.
I could only imagine how it must feel. Is it like an accomplished feeling kind of thing?
Yeah, it's definitely, I guess, that feeling of satisfaction. Like, oh, cool, I must be doing something right if they want me to come over there and do it too. And then, I guess a year or two after that, and then got invited to go to France and
That's
do it.
wild.
And it just kind of rolls on from that.
Is there any moment in your career, this is a very generic question, but like, is there any moment in your career that really stands out that you always think about over all the other memories? Because I'm sure you've had plenty of amazing memories.
Oh, I guess recently, I mean, Harry's a good mate, and I've been making boards for him for like 10 years or so, and he just won the longboard world title a couple of weeks ago, riding a board that I shaped for him. So that was pretty.
I saw the trophy.
Yeah, that's pretty satisfying, to be a part of that in some ways. Pretty cool. And then just random moments, like I actually surfed with a mate this morning that's a photographer that we did a bunch of stuff together in Bali, and we were kind of chatting about how good it was back then. Some of the people we worked for were not so good, but we got to do some cool stuff out of it, and we were just chatting about it. And I was like, I shaped a surfboard in a shipping container on Hitler's runway at Tempelhof in Berlin. Like, that's something you never think would happen.
Yeah, that's
kind of like random things like that you look back on, and I'd sort of totally forgotten about it until we were just chatting in the surf this morning. I was like, that is pretty cool. Like, that's something I never would have thought that I ever would have done. But yeah, it's just little random moments like that.
It's that is pretty random.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
It's like watching you just like tell this story. I'm like sitting there, I'm like trying to like put it all together. I'm like, yeah, that is kind of
like in Berlin for 3 days for some fashion trade show thing, and you're like kind of like a monkey on display shaping in a shipping container outside on the runway, and you're like, this is bizarre but kind of cool. And then there's, I don't know, Hans or something his name was, some dude from Denmark. We ended up like drag racing the 2 motorbikes up and down the runway after, when we were packing up from the day, like getting chased by German security guards. Like, nine. Like, this is cool. All right, thanks.
It's like, when like Aussies go to Bali and all the Indonesians are just like over it, but then it's like you're going to Germany, you're like, I'm Australian. Yeah. It's like scooting down the highway.
It's so bizarre. Yeah, like just in board shorts and t-shirts, no shoes, no helmets, and we're like, hey, I'll race you up the runway on the motorbike. Yeah, right.
How do you feel like? I always look at the like how surf's progressed from real long, like power strokes and smooth, and now it seems to be like super like skatey, I guess is a term in the surfing world that if you don't surf, you probably wouldn't understand. But it's like real skatey, and then they're cutting aerials and just like throwing aerials, even off like shitty whitewash. And as you've seen it progress, are you still like boggled that you're like, man, like when I was watching it, it was so different to like how it's like just natural progression, I guess, of life as well.
Yeah, I guess it's just the evolution of it, and it's kind of, I guess surfing's now split in so many directions, and so many, there's air guys, there's power surfers or whatever, like it's just so many different avenues now that are all getting kind of pushed, but in different directions. So it's just kind of, it's cool and interesting that there is so many different facets to it, that whatever kind of side of it you're into, there's something going on.
Yeah, it's really weird. It's like, it seems like it used to be like surfers against the general population, because they're like, oh, surfers are bums, and they're like, they're the outcasts and anarchists or whatever. And now it seems like within surfing, it's like you either longboard, or like longboard and like retro surfboards is like, they're like together.
Yeah, there's like all those little subcultures inside it.
And they're all like kind of like, no, mine's better.
Yeah.
I do like what the drag boys are doing with the like, it's like this 90s trance style chopped up collagey
bogan kind of.
Yeah, like just they're like, we don't give a fuck. We're just gonna make the most outlandish videos, even if it doesn't look appealing to the eye. We're just gonna like slap it all together and make it like,
it's good marketing.
It's that, I feel like that's such a big thing at the moment too. I don't know, like because I watch Craze the I'm not sure if you film like who. Obviously, was it for Thomas Surfboards? Like that film was specific for Thomas.
Yeah,
Surfboards?
I guess we funded making it.
Yeah, okay. Because like that is so different to like what they're.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting to see like everyone's take now on how they're making films within the surf industry.
Yeah, I guess it's the same as the surfing itself. There's just so many different approaches to it, and it's kind of cool that everything gets done differently.
Yeah, it's good for variety, I guess. It's because it's so like, even just like with social media and all facets of like creativity, there's so much of it. Like it's so dense. Like you could just scroll for hours finding.
It gets endless.
Like I don't know where to, like, you can't even pick one thing now, like a hobby, without like, there's just so much of it. It's like you don't even have time to have two hobbies, because the first hobby that you do have is just, there's like way too much.
Yeah.
I'm sure you probably don't really have time, because I remember when we asked, like when I asked you to come on, you're like looking through a calendar. I'm like, I'm sure this guy doesn't even have time to scroll anything, because he's just flat bickies.
Yeah, a little bit. You get caught sometimes. It's an endless trap I think everyone falls into at times.
It's a dangerous world out there, people. Stay safe. With longboards, there's another design that I'm interested in, where they carve the nose out, like underneath on the underside of the surfboard, like right at the nose. They kind of like
you have the
like an oval
concave under the nose.
Concave, that's the word I'm looking for. Yeah, what is the purpose of that?
Basically, it generates lift. So like, a shortboard has concave through the middle to the back of the board to create lift to make it go faster. The concave under the nose just kind of helps to create lift under the nose, so to help nose riding.
Is when, like, 'cause you have done boards with concaves in them.
Yeah, I do both with and without.
And when you hand shape that, I feel like that must be really tricky to get it perfectly like oval if it's not coming off a machine.
I don't know, it's sort of second nature.
You're like, oh, everything to me now just seems to be really
Yeah, I guess you can, you kind of measure it out, mark it out, give yourself some guide points and whatnot, just so, it is the same. But then, so much shaping is just done by feel and by eye as well, I think.
And is that all through the hand planer?
Yeah, if you're putting a concave through something, if it's not coming off the machine with it already in there, then you just digging a hole with the planer and smoothing it out.
Open the best, you're like, that's all right. What would be like your most favourite design that you have designed? Because I'm sure I did look on the website and there was like a lot of things going on there.
I don't know. There's too many. I really love the 12 footers, like the big gliders. They're something that I think is kind of pretty unique and really fun to ride. It's not, it's not an everyday board, but in the right time and place, they're pretty amazing. But yeah, I don't think I have a favourite. I think the best thing about it is not doing just one type or style of board. It is the variety.
And getting back to your uncle, because obviously he got you into surfing and stuff, what does he like feel about now that you're quite successful as a shaper and you've like obviously done very well for yourself? Do you ever like have conversations with him where he's like, remember when I took you out and you like
no,
those kind of moments?
He actually passed away quite a while ago, so I guess.
Sorry.
No, that's all right. Yeah, I think when he passed away, I was still at uni, so building surfboards was still a hobby back then. It hadn't sort of become a job yet, so I don't know.
So we'll have to wander on.
Yeah.
Oh, that caught me off guard. I'm so sorry. I was like, oh shit. This board here, just behind camera, this it's got no fins. It's just like a wood board.
Yeah. I didn't make it.
Have you ever surfed one of these without fins, like a finless board?
No. Oh, I've ridden a couple of finless layers before, but I don't know. I just didn't get into it a whole lot. It wasn't kind of. It's hard. Those things are hard if you're a bigger human to ride too, because they're so bad at paddling and catching waves. They kind of really suit, like 60 kilo kind of guys. So that was sort of one thing that I guess one reason I never got into the finless boards a whole lot. I made quite a lot of them for guys, but just never really got into riding them. I guess was more just into riding longboards and that kind of stuff more.
When you've collaborated with other shapers, has there ever been like a moment where they've shown you something you're like, oh, like it's really just like taking you back and you're like, I have never thought of it in that way, or like I wouldn't have never have thought to do it that kind of style?
Yeah, you get little moments or just little insights, and then also it's, I guess, technique stuff too, like watching other guys shape and you see how they do something, you're like, oh, that's different to how I do that. I'm going to try that. And some things you're like, oh, that's a way better way of, shaping in the flip in a nose or something as to how I used to do it. And you kind of just adopt a different technique.
I always find like in those moments too, because you've been doing something for so long and you're just like, yeah, right. Like, oh, I don't know how I didn't see that. Especially with someone who's like you've been doing this for so long, like you'd think that you'd just know everything at this point, but then there'd be moments where you've like, even like I guess for like a younger shaper coming through with a design that he's talking about, has that ever like you're just like, oh, I would never have thought to like kind of shape it that way, because like who is it? Morning of the Earth Surfboards down in Byron Bay.
Yeah,
he's like pretty well known for his concaves and stuff. But like to me, I didn't know anything about concaves until I kind of saw like some of his boards that Torrin was like riding in. Yeah. I know he's a lot older, but when you're looking at like, I guess the list of all the boards, do you see other shapers and go, oh, like I would, like you kind of implement some of those, like maybe a concave or?
Yeah, I mean, you get inspiration from everywhere, like old boards, new boards, and you look at some guy's shapes, and you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like or not even if it's the whole board, but you're just like, oh, I like how they've flicked the rocker in the tail on that, or like how they finished the beak on the nose. Little things, like just little elements of boards. You're like, oh, that's kind of cool, and you can kind of bring inspiration from that into something you're already doing or into a new shape. I think if you get to think what you're doing is the best and is the best way of doing it, then you're going backwards, because you got to keep learning and listening and like working with younger surfers and young guys that are into boards and into shaping and surfing, and there's a lot of knowledge to be learnt by them, even if they don't have the experience. Some of what they're saying could be right, or they could, be onto something that's worth listening to, because there might be, 10% of what they're saying can be incorporated into something else or to make something better. So I think it's you'd be pretty pig-headed if you didn't sort of listen as much as possible and try and filter it out. And, there's always something to be learnt somewhere.
When you first started shaping and you were in these bays, from like just watching movies and interviews and things, you can see that like the mentality, obviously because of the different generation, like they were very like hard-headed. And did you find it hard when you were in the shaping bay, like working alongside other people, like trying to extract information from them, or was everyone really open and like, yeah, right, this is how we do it, like kind of thing?
A bit of both. Some people are quite happy to share and pass on what they know, and then other people, whether it's because of insecurities or whatever other reason, just don't want to share it all. You really get a bit of both. Some people are happy to pass on what they know. Others just won't give you a time of day. You meet shapers. I remember being younger and met shapers that I'd kind of look up to, and then met them and you go, oh, you're actually kind of an asshole. And then you meet other guys and they're just, the nicest humans ever. So it's a real kind of hit and miss, but kind of like anything, I guess. But yeah, you just really nice people and not so nice people. It kind of just, yeah.
It's the way of the world, unfortunately. Yeah, so you never really, the person that was like kind of mentoring you through shaping, he never had any dramas. It was like
he was always super open, super helpful. Also, a few times he told me to not make surfboards and go and get a real job, because otherwise, you'll end up working your ass off for 50 years and never make any money. But at the same time, you got to do what you like doing as well. So I kind of listened, but didn't completely listen to him with some things. But yeah, he was always pretty open, and I was lucky. I worked out of the Hayden factory in Maroochydore for a few years, and those guys were awesome and open and happy to kind of share their experience as well. But then, yeah, I've gone into other factories, not to work, but, just to have a look around and say hi, and they're like, kind of like, no, don't look at how we do it, get out, kind of thing. But it just depends.
Well, I guess touching on on the mental health side of things, more so when you get told that you should quit and you should do this, I feel like it builds this resilience, and like it kind of more makes you more passionate, because you're like, oh no, don't tell me not to do this. Like I want to do this. Yeah,
a little bit. And then at the same time, I was like, I'd been at uni for a few years. I was like, no, I don't want to go back to uni. I don't want I'm just going to keep doing this for a bit longer and see what happens. And then it ended up working.
It's like, now look at you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough one, I guess. Yeah, before, I was saying, you're obviously super passionate, you've been doing it. And then, if there was, other kids out there, or, someone, even, an adult, for that matter, how would you describe or, speak to someone and say, hey, man, if you could give one bit of advice, what would it be? Or, to keep going, or, don't give up kind of thing?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, if it's what you really want to do, you just got to keep plugging away at it. That's been my experience anyway.
It's the best Aussie thing. Just keep plugging away, son. You'll be right, brother. Because normally I ask that question at the end, but I was like, I'll just see, because we're on the topic anyway.
Yeah.
So moving forward, I guess as a brand and things, how did you find? Did you because obviously shaping is amazing and all that kind of stuff, but then how did you find the business side of it?
Still learning. Yeah, I guess it's just that running a business is, if you're not from that background, I guess that's just been trial and error, and then I guess just leaning on people that that have more experience, asking for advice. If you know someone that's been successful at running a different kind of business, that there's still, no matter what the business, there's basic fundamentals that are the same when running any kind of business. You know, you got to know how much money's coming in and how much you got to spend and that sort of stuff, and just getting help. I think I've been super lucky. I've got, you know, a really great team of people now that work with us, taking care of the business side of stuff. I think that was one of the best things I ever did, was get that help, you know, in terms of having someone to do the bookkeeping and the admin side of stuff, because that's not my strong suit. It's not why I got into this industry. I'm not passionate about bookkeeping. And I'm not good at it, so why spend my energy on something that someone else can do a way better job at it than what I can? I'm better off focusing on what I can do, pay someone else to do what they're good at, and it's only going to help you down the track.
It's I think that's such a good business like mentality, because I find a lot of people try to do everything on their own, and then they may like kind of drift from what they're like, they lose motivation or passion because of that.
You can only do so much, and you're better off spending your energy and focus on the stuff that you're good at, and, you know, getting help where you need it, and getting people that are, you know, I need someone to do this. Well, I'll find someone that's really good at doing that, and
and then just
get
outsource.
them to do it. Yeah, you know, that just works. I remember getting told that by Dare Jennings years ago, the guy that owns Deus. He started Mambo. He's done a heap of cool shit over the years, and I remember talking to him and him just saying, you know, one of the best things I ever did was finding the right person for the right job, which kind of comes down to that. It's just, you know, I need someone that's really good at marketing. I'm going to try and find the best marketing person I can that also shares my vision, or, you know, likes the same style as me, but I'm going to get them to do that. Or, you know, you need a good bookkeeper, you find a good bookkeeper. It just makes sense to...
Yeah. It does. I find that personally is like, I can resonate with that in terms of finding someone that's really good in their industry, but they share your same interests and like the vision that you're trying to portray.
Yeah.
They're on board with that. Like, because there's so many times you can outsource stuff. They don't care about what you're doing.
Yeah,
they're just doing it because they can get money for it.
No point getting a marketing person that shares, you know, has a completely different image in their head about how your brand should be portrayed, because they're not going to do what you know, they're not going to portray the image that you've spent years creating, or, you know, or your ethos is. They're just going to do what the textbook says to do, you know. It's also... Yeah, they've got to be good at their job, but also kind of align on the same kind of, I guess, values or principles as what you do as well.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of people, I always forget to do this when I have people that like have a brand name. I always forget to ask them where the name came from. Obviously, your name is Thomas, but when you were like going into the name and like deciding on how you were gonna obviously sell your product, did you ever have any other names, or was it just? You're just like, nah, Thomas.
Yeah, I didn't really think about it at the time. It was just when it just kind of happened. It's Thomas Surfboards. It was easy. I probably couldn't think of anything else at the time.
It's so funny how people come around with their names. Like, some people like do that. They're just like, oh, yeah, that'll do. I'll just run with it.
Yeah. I mean, would have been, you know, 15 or 16, so there probably wasn't a whole lot of thought involved.
So obviously you've never changed your name. It's always been Thomas Surfboards.
Yeah.
From the beginning. And with the graphics and stuff like that, because obviously, like, all this, like the bottle cap, the plane, and that, for instance, and this Respect Your Mum, love this. But, like, who did you come up with all this kind of design?
Some of it, I think I did the bottle cap and the planer. I mean, the bottle cap's kind of Andy Warhol, Pepsi pop art kind of inspired sort of thing. The planer is just it's a tool you use, and then, like I said, like good people. I got a mate of mine, Lockie, who's a graphic designer, branding type of guy. He's does heaps of cool shit. So I've worked with him a lot. Like he's done a lot of the artwork for different logos or T-shirts or whatnot for us. He did all of like Bolter, the beer. So he did all the branding and marketing and the whole kind of aesthetic of Bolter. So he's pretty good at what he does. So he sort of helps us out from time to time.
With the Respect Your Mum thing, was that in anything in particular, or did he just like kind of come up with a design?
He kind of came up with it, but at the same time he knew for about the first 10 years of the business, my mum was also our bookkeeper and financier, I guess, like, oh shit, a couple of grand short, she'd loan us some money. So I guess a lot of it comes back to that too. So, she probably wouldn't have got off the ground without her initial help. Back then I couldn't afford to pay a bookkeeper.
Yeah.
Or an accounts person to take care of that side of the business for us. So my mum helped out for years at the start. So I guess it's a bit of a ode to her and like her help.
Yeah. That's so sick because I love it. It's like real individual too. It's like unique to the brand.
Yeah.
Which is so cool. Like, and even like this one, like only hand jives, no neck.
Yeah.
I show my friends that they're like, that is like, it's so funny. I was like, yeah, it's amazing. I want to talk a little bit more about shaping, I guess, because there are people that do listen to this who probably don't surf or have no idea about shaping or resin art, or like glassing and stuff like that. So if you were to break it down from like step by step, obviously you get the blank, and then the first thing you do is like draw the shape onto the blank in pencil.
Yeah, if you're hand shaping, yeah, you'll kind of. I used to plane the blank a little bit just to thickness, get rid of some of the thickness and foil the blank out a little bit, then draw the outline on using a template, pencil, cut it out, and then keep planing and shaping, finishing it with a bunch of different hand tools.
And with, like, when you're shaping the rails and things like that, are you, like, thinking about the wave and, like, how it's going to be surfed? So, obviously, the diameter, this is, like, real basic, by the way. This is, like, the thickness of the rail and things is going to affect the way, how it sits in the wave.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff, I guess you're thinking about as you're shaping what the rail shape, how it's going to feel when you're surfing it, how it's going to sit in the water, whether it's, a soft rail that's going to hold or with an edge that'll release. It's all that shapes.
All that shaping stuff.
Yeah, it's coming into it when you, yeah.
So for people that don't know, what is release?
I guess like an edge releases. So that's, if a board doesn't release, it's going to be slow and hard to turn. With a sharp edge, it releases, so that lets the board turn. Water flows straight off a hard edge. It doesn't wrap around it. So the soft edge of water wraps around it and creates hold and makes it slower. So you have a sharp edge, which the water will flow and just release straight off the edge. So it makes the board feel faster and easier to turn.
And with tail design, so obviously there's a fair few different tail designs, but in particular like fish boards, because you shape a lot of fishes and like different. Can you explain the reason why it's shaped in that way? Like what does it actually do when it's in the water?
Well, you're only ever on one rail at a time. So basically it's like having two pintails. It's like a twin pin. So you're on one side yet, because you've got the split swallowtail, so you just end up with a straighter rail, and then you swap and you're on the other rail, you've got a straighter rail. So it's kind of just like having two pintails split apart.
I know you're probably like, this sounds so basic, but it's just more for like people listening so they can understand surfing, like get a bit more of a gauge on surfing it as a whole. Because I find like when I first started getting into surfing and things like that, people would be saying all this terminology, and you're like, I have no idea what the hell they're talking about. So I was like, if I could ever have a moment where I could speak to a shaper, it'd be interesting to see like their take on it. Because like a surfer talking about their board compared to a shaper talking about the board is like completely different, I find.
Yeah.
So with your tails, like a straight edge tail, that's predominantly on longboards, right? You just keep it straight.
Yeah, a lot of the longboards will have a wider square tail. It's just so you have more width in the tail, like a wider tail, wider area, wider tail area. It just makes a traditional longboard easier to nose ride. The wider it is, the more stable it is. A bit harder to turn, but it's kind of the balance is sort of finding the balance between too wide or not wide enough, and just what you want to achieve. Some boards, if you don't want to do anything but nose ride, then you'll just have a super wide square tail.
And that's just will hold you in the wave itself.
Yeah, it'll just hold in the wave and just less tippy, more stable.
How long did it take you before you could stand on the nose on a surfboard?
I don't know. It's probably a couple of years of surfing. I can't remember.
I feel like it's so hard to do. Like for me personally, like obviously I'm not the best surfer, but it's just fun trying to do it. Like trying to get your board to hold in the wave and get at the front. Are you always trying like new tricks and stuff when you go surfing? Or do you feel like you mastered it?
I wouldn't say I'm trying new tricks. I think now at my age, I'm trying to surf as good as I did 10 years ago.
Trying to survive.
Yeah. It's trying not to go backwards now.
It's a dangerous world out there.
Yeah.
So I guess moving forward as the Thomas Surfboard brand, where do you see it in the next 5 years? Or 10 years for that matter?
Who knows?
I don't know.
See what happens. I don't know. We're opening a shop in Bali in a couple of months. And we're going to set up a little factory over there so we can make some boards over there for that shop. So that'll be an interesting process and learning curve to see what it's like doing something in another country. So that's going to be a bit of fun. But yeah, other than that, it's just sort of roll with it and see what happens.
I got a little bit sidetracked there. I was talking about surfboard shaping, then I ended up asking about something completely different. Going back to like the resin and stuff, is glassing something that you're like really into, or do you kind of more shift it off to other people to do?
Yeah, I don't want to deal with resin anymore. Yeah, I used to glass and do some of it, but now, I mean, just with the nature of it, I don't do much at all with resin anymore. Got a team of guys in there that do a great job and they're really good at what they do, so I kind of just leave it up to them now.
How many layers do you put on a surfboard, like in terms like your fiberglass layers?
It varies. Most boards will have one layer on the bottom and two on the top. It's kind of a broad standard, but the weight of the cloth varies. There's 4 ounce, 6 ounce, 8 ounce cloth, so it kind of depends on the board as to what you do. Like a short board will have a 4 ounce bottom and maybe a single 4 or a double 4 on the deck, whereas up to the heavier longboards we do will have an 8 ounce bottom and a double 8 ounce deck, so it's twice as much fiberglass. So it just depends, but pretty standard that I have one on the bottom and two on the top.
And with recycling surfboards, obviously once they're glassed up and or the foam, or even if they're broken, can you kind of like break them down and turn it into something else? So it's like that's it. It's just like going straight into the ground.
Unfortunately, they're landfill. Really, there's not much that you can do with an old board. Keep repairing it and riding it for as long as possible. But yeah, once a surfboard's done, it's kind of done, and there's not really much you can do to reuse it, unfortunately.
Yeah, because it seems to be like a big thing at the moment. Like people are talking about, I guess, in the current climate of like how much rubbish and stuff's getting around the world.
Yeah, the whole sustainability thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And unfortunately, surfboards are made from petrochemicals. Resins, fiberglass, the foam, everything's kind of an oil-based product to start with. I think the best thing we do, and with the types of boards we build being, predominantly heavier glass, traditional longboards, they're boards that last a long time. So I think that's a plus side compared to your white 510 JS or DHD that, those things are built to last 6 months at best. So that's that style of board, the lightweight performance disposable shortboard, has a pretty bad environmental impact, I guess. But at least with traditional longboards that, they'll last 20 years if you look after it. So, I feel a bit better about that in terms of at least the types of boards that I chose to make were ones that we're not trying to make a board super light, so it's going to fall apart quickly. We actually try and make them heavier because they go better heavier, and as a byproduct of that, they last a lot longer. So I think that's the best you can do. There's a lot of sustainable surfboards out there that are kind of made with what's claimed to be eco resins and recycled foam and all that stuff. But most of the time, unfortunately, I think in our industry, there's a fair bit of greenwashing involved. Like the recycled foam, it's like 5% recycled.
Yeah, okay. It's more like a marketing.
Yeah, there's a lot more marketing to it than there actually is genuine sort of thought or science behind it. I think so. The best thing you can do with any type of surfboard, no matter what the materials are that it's made from, is just hopefully make it to last as long as possible.
Yeah.
That's the best you can do. I mean, we've covered the roof of the factory in solar panels, so we're doing what we can in other areas to kind of make up for the fact that what we make is made from oil. But
yeah, no, that wasn't a question. Like, I wasn't trying to take a stab.
Oh, no,
okay.
but
I
that's...
was like, oh, shit, maybe he thought I was like...
No,
I
mean, it's something we talk about all the time because it's, it's a big issue, and it's something that's...
Yeah.
I've got a 9-year-old son that comes home from school asking about climate change, so it's, it's something you talk about all the time. And, so you try, you're constantly conscious of it, and it's just trying to do the best you can with what you've got. Unfortunately, there isn't another way for us to make what we do, so at least we'll try and make the boards last, and that's the best you can do with that. And then try and just do it in other ways. We've expanded the factory now, so the whole operation is all in one place, so we're not sending a van up and down the coast twice a week to pick up blanks from here and drop them there. Just try and do everything as consciously as possible.
Yeah, I was chatting to Liam about that just before you came in here, and we were talking about like other surf brands shaping obviously like machine shaping outsourcing overseas and things like that.
Yeah.
So like it would obviously cost to get over from overseas to get the boards to like do the finishing product or however they do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and even like there's manufacturers in Australia that'll get a blank from the Gold Coast, shape it in Byron Bay, send the blank up back to the Gold Coast to get glassed, and then send it to Sydney to go to a shop. Or transporting's one of the biggest carbon footprint. So is reducing that as much as you can. So we get one big truck that comes once every 6 weeks with all our blanks, and then the board's done completely here, and then the only next step of it goes, if it's not picked up here by the customer, it gets shipped straight to the customer, and that's it. At least there's no back and forth in between. So just trying to reduce things in other aspects to just try and make it a smart operation.
Yeah, it makes sense. Like less middleman.
Yeah.
So it's more like direct on what's going on.
I mean, there's boards getting made. The blanks come from Australia. They get shipped to China, or Taiwan or somewhere, and the surfboard gets made, and then it gets shipped back to Australia. And it's like, that's not a smart way to build a product or an environmentally friendly way of doing it. Like,
yeah, I've now that you've said it, it's kind of like, because I have seen some things on that kind of stuff. Obviously you've kind of described how you feel about it, but it is, I feel like it's like when we're talking about this greenwashing thing, I was chatting to the girls who I have in my studio with, and we're talking about like even with clothing brands, how they'll be like, oh yeah, it's it's ethical and it's sustainable and all this kind of stuff, but it's still getting made overseas, and it's like 5%
Yeah.
sustainable product, and then the rest is just like a normal product. But because of marketing, they've like marketed this product and this brand that it's like this thing, but it's like a facade.
Yeah.
It's quite disappointing, to be honest.
Yeah.
So brands that doing that, please
I
stop.
think it's pretty common. So I think, I guess I kind of get sick of seeing it. It's like such the thing to say now is something's sustainable, or it's, sustainably sourced. And it's like, yeah, but is it really? And it's just a marketing thing now. It's not genuine. It's kind of like it's just thrown around haphazardly. So it's like, well, we've got a roof full of solar panels, but I'm not posting photos on Instagram saying solar powered factory, look how good we are. Because it's like, well, yeah, that is good. And I'm stoked that we can do that, but I'm still making surfboards out of oil. So,
it's like balance, right?
Yeah,
You're
it's trying to find a balance, but I'm not going to go promoting that we're sustainable because of one aspect. It's like, yeah, that's good, but unfortunately we still rely on that. So it's like, just be real about it. Don't be over the top.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like it's gone. The industry started. I was chatting to someone recently about that. It was like the boho, like kind of culture or lifestyle,
Yeah.
and then it
Gypsy
somehow went from like that into like this sustainable. I'm doing this,
Yeah.
and it's. I don't know if it's because of social media or anything like that, but yeah, it just seems like people are putting up this facade and other people are buying into it, not fully knowing exactly what they're buying.
Yeah.
But where at least you've stated exactly like the surfboards are built, they're a lot more like dense and stuff like that. So like people kind of, if they do listen to this and they do buy one of your boards, which I hope they do, they at least they know what they're getting kind of thing. And I'm sure it's all over your website as well. Like you just, like there's no bullshit kind of thing. It's just like, hey, this is what it is. This is what we do. Obviously this is bad, but like we also tried. We're trying our best,
Yeah, it is what it is.
I feel like that's such a good mentality, and it seems like you guys have got it locked down here. But before we get out of here, Thomas, there's two things we like to do. The first one is you get to shout out a local legend who you think should come on the show. And then you kind of already done the second one, but you get to give a piece of advice to someone out there who might just need a bit of a kick in the ass to start their project.
I guess my wife. She hand makes shoes.
I paid you for those shoes apparently today, but
yeah.
I didn't even know about them.
Yeah, I didn't know. That was kind of weird, but yeah, I guess. Yeah, I mean, definitely she's obviously someone I look up to. I've married her. But yeah, I mean, she's a high school teacher and a shoemaker, and she does cool stuff and makes her shoes start to finish herself in a studio at our house. So that's pretty cool. I like what she does, and yeah.
That's the best.
Yeah.
It's like if you didn't say that, she'd be like, hey, brother.
Yeah, I'd probably get in trouble too.
Perfect. And yeah, again, the second one is you got to give a piece of advice to someone who may need to start their project. Just a bit of a kick in the ass. They might be listening to this going, I don't know if I can do this. And you're like, listen to your champion. You can do it.
I guess you just got to keep trying. I mean, if you really want to do it, keep doing it. And if if you think it's too hard, then just, if you're sure you want to do it, it's not too hard, keep doing it. I think if it's something you're really passionate about and you want to make happen, there's kind of no excuse to stop. It's part-time jobs pay the bills, and you just got to do what you want to do after hours and be up till midnight and be doing shit at 10 o'clock on a Sunday night if that's what the passion is, and you want to pull it off. You just got to do what it takes.
Perfect. Nailed it. Well, this has been another amazing episode of Creative Appetite. Thank you so much, Thomas, for coming on and giving me your time and having a good old chat about the surfing culture and your business. For everyone else, please like, subscribe, tell your grandma about it. And you know what to do. Hang around for the next one. Let's go.